On today's Rice Report, I am joined by Katie the Russian. She is the founder and CEO of Plan B Passport. And we're going to be talking about exit strategies, jurisdictional arbitrage, and second passports. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show, somebody that I've known for several years in the space. I am joined by Katie the Russian. She is the CEO and I believe one of the founders of Plan B Passport. I will have links down below for everything that we talk about on today's show. It's a very important topic, so make sure you're paying attention to today's video. Katie, welcome. How's it going?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Everything is great. Life is beautiful.
Life is beautiful. It's what you make it is the most important thing that people need to realize about that statement.
Truly.
Because a lot of people are probably experiencing some sort of personal negativity in their life, but it's all how you handle the things and what you do to get through it. Because even obstacles can lead you into brighter days, per se.
Absolutely.
So
Um,
if you don't,
actually,
go
go for
ahead.
it.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that the way I started Plan B Passport was through my hard times and hard days. And the only reason basically, let me just go through that. The only reason I started Plan B Passport because I'm an immigrant myself, and when I did my immigration process, my lawyer that I've been using for immigration just completely scammed me, abandoned me. Like, she received the payment, and ever since I did not hear back from her. She stopped responding to my emails. She stopped answering my phone calls. So here I am in the US, barely speaking English, not sure about how immigration process is supposed to work. And I had to figure it out myself and self-represent. And that what turned me into being an entrepreneur in the investment migration space. So just like you mentioned, it's what you make out of it. I had a shitty situation that totally worked out for me and made me so passionate about what I currently do. So
No, that's awesome. Awesome to know. And I'm definitely looking forward to diving into that and learning more about that. But for people who might be unfamiliar, do you mind introducing yourself, Katie, to people who, and also you kind of said what led you into creating Plan B Passport. Um, I guess if you want to expound upon that too, aside from introducing yourself.
absolutely. So I'm Katie the Russian on Twitter. I'm a founder and CEO of Plan B Passport. As you can as you can guess by now, I was born and raised in Russia, only moved to the US 7 years ago. At Plan B Passport, I help Bitcoiners all over the world to obtain second citizenship or residency. And the concept that I talk a lot about is called flag theory. My personal definition of flag theory is the way of limiting your dependency on any one particular state by stacking your flags in other jurisdictions. Stacking flags, by flags, I mean second citizenship is the ultimate hedge, of course, but also second residency, a bug out real estate, and sometimes even driver license or legal entity can be useful. So this is the game of jurisdictional arbitrage that we help Bitcoiners play.
And you're also into the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency community,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
Is that kind of when you came up with the idea for Plan B, the name, did it have kind of a double innuendo being like an exit strategy, but also we talk in the cryptocurrency space, Plan Bitcoin, Plan B?
Yeah, so I was already a Bitcoiner when I started this company. I was, I mean, those concepts just go hand in hand. You want your currency to be borderless. You want to take the control back to the individual, take the control back from the state. That's what Bitcoin does. And the concept of flag theory does exactly the same thing. So by having multiple jurisdiction, you can like decentralize your own identity and play it play it for your advantage, right? So
Right.
let's say you go to Mexico, and even if you are a Mexican resident and you have Mexican driver license, you don't want to show it to them. You want to show them your American driver license because there's no chance they will ever send you a fine. So that's like an example of a small scale usage of the jurisdictional arbitrage. For example, my dad in Russia getting pulled over always shows his Florida driver license, and he does not speak English, so all he can say is no Russian American citizen, and like the cops just have no idea what to do. They let him go. So that's a very small scale usage of jurisdictional arbitrage. If we talk about something bigger, that could be obviously tax advantages, right? With the US, it's a little tricky, but let's say you, as a Canadian citizen, bought Bitcoin, but you don't want to later on pay capital gain taxes. What you have to do is you become a non tax resident of Canada. You will have to cut some ties with the country, like either rent out your property or sell your property. You will have to close some bank accounts, and you have to actually relocate elsewhere and
Mhm.
establish a new tax residency. Now, you establish this new tax residency in a low tax regime or zero capital gains tax regime, which the countries I work with mostly tax advantageous. So now you're a tax resident of a country that has zero capital gain tax, zero global income tax, zero gift tax, zero inheritance tax. So you completely take advantage of this game of flag theory. So that's a good example of how Bitcoiners use it too. And many people just use it as a plan B. Like that, hence the name. You just want to have an exit strategy. You want to make sure if shit hits the fan in your home jurisdictions, you have your way out. So hence the plan B password, and of course, plan B as a Bitcoin.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate you explaining that. So you've been in the United States from Russia for 7 years.
Mhm.
When did you decide to start Plan B?
It was over 4 years ago now. And
Okay.
interestingly enough, as a Bitcoiner on Twitter, or I was also on Facebook back then, more often, I just started talking about the concept of jurisdictional arbitrage and flag theory. I was already so passionate about. I had no product to sell. I had no company or services to provide. I was just like, Bitcoiners must know about it. I'm gonna spread the word regardless. And the more I kept talking about it, the more people were asking me questions, and I started gaining a lot of expertise in the area through my immigration and through the help that I was offering to those who asked. And then later on, I was like, wait a second, I have audience, I have what people want, I have the knowledge and expertise, I just don't have the product. So I started Plan B Passport, and now I do.
Awesome. No, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's I commend you for what you've done since you. I mean, I believe there's a co-founder that you work with as well.
Well, not co-founder. I started myself 4 years ago, but a couple years ago, Jessica joined me, and
Okay.
we're now partners. So that's been a good journey too.
Awesome, awesome, and I'll have links, like I said, for everything that we talk about. I believe that you're going to get me a referral or affiliate link. So if people are interested in utilizing Plan B, I encourage you to use that link, which will be down below in the video description and a pinned comment. And it's a way that you can support Rice TVX. And there's also a YouTube channel that I'll have linked down below that explains a lot of information that you guys can check out and learn more details. So I'm here at the Plan B website, and I love what I've seen so far. Limit your dependency on any one particular state by obtaining a second passport. Are you guys specifically dealing with second passports, or are you helping people with obtaining full citizenship and potentially expatriation?
Yep. So a passport comes with naturalization and naturalization process, aka citizenship. So we do help you obtain a second citizenship that comes with a passport. There are some programs that are residency programs, which means it's not a straight path to citizenship. You have to become a resident, keep the residency for 5 years, and then become a citizen. But I do like the straight path to citizenship programs more. If you hit the programs button, it will show a couple of jurisdictions that do have a specific citizenship by investment program. What that means is that you don't have to move to the island, you don't have to meet any certain requirements. All you have to do is play the pure capitalism game, meaning that you either donate into government fund or you purchase real estate, and on this basis, you obtain citizenship. The process is fully remote. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, and it takes about 6 to 12 months, depending on jurisdiction, to obtain citizenship. So that's why we keep saying it's like pure capitalism applied to nation states. And one of the book I would love to recommend to your audience, it's called Sovereign Individual.
Mm-hmm.
The book was actually written over 20 years ago, but they predicted a digital currency that is going to be borderless. They described Bitcoin because before it was a thing. And then they also talked about the end of nation states through the capitalism evolving in between countries. Basically, what it means is right now, countries already starting to realize that they need to compete for you, for the fruits of your labor and your capital, right? Especially after COVID, what happened when we all were locked down and there was basically no reason to be in San Francisco or New York, and people started leaving, and they also started going to different jurisdictions. Like Latin America started growing really fast, and that made a lot of people realize that, okay, so I can take my knowledge and my capital to another country where my dollar goes way further. I can still work remotely, and I actually like the regulatory environment here much more. And that's basically the game of jurisdictional arbitrage that hurts nation states that don't support what you want. And once this pure capitalism evolves, there will basically be a traditional market environment in which we have equality raised to the top, right? Just like in any capitalistic environment, and price raised to the bottom. Now, the nation states have to provide better services at better price, otherwise, you leave. And that's what I really want to see because, I mean, capitalism makes prices and products better. And
No,
if
I
we
agree.
like if we can win that from the government, because right now if you're born in a country, you have one citizenship, you don't have any other residencies, they have monopoly over you.
No, I know, and it seems like they're trying to make it harder and harder for people to obtain second passports and
Yes.
and expatriate as well, which I want to kind of get into like the pros and cons. But before we do, you said some things that kind of interest me. And is this the book for one that you were talking about?
Yep, that's the
Okay.
one.
I was looking it up, so I'll put a link down below for this so people can check it out. And I'll, since you mentioned it and recommended, I'll probably check it out myself. You mentioned basically using this to our own advantage. And I mentioned that it seems like there is something happening on the back end that's trying to minimize and reduce people from being able to do this. So we're seeing a lot of talk with the World Economic Forum. There's a lot of talk coming out of the United Nations. Um, is this going to be something that is just going to be completely shut down that you can, that you see? Like, are they going to stop allowing people to do this ultimately? Like, because I mean, you have a lot better of an insight on this, and I'm just wondering why they're making it more and more difficult and harder for people to be able to obtain these.
Absolutely. So they definitely going to try and play the gatekeepers game. But just like with Bitcoin, you can't ban Bitcoin, you can ban yourself from the Bitcoin network and the gains that it's going to bring you. I believe the same is going to happen with jurisdictional arbitrage. Sorry. So let's say we talk about nations that prevent its own citizens of ability to choose in other jurisdictions.
Mhm.
Then they probably, because they don't want your capital to travel anywhere else, they're going to try and prevent you from using Bitcoin. They're going to shut down exchanges. They're going to try to make you file like extensive amount of paperwork on it every time. They're going to completely KYC you. They're going to try seizing your funds. They're going to try and make you keep it on exchanges. Now all of it makes citizens to think twice if they want to actually live here. Now in the meantime, there's another country that realizes, let's take a very known example, El Salvador.
Right.
El
Especially
Salvador
for the
was
Bitcoiners.
Yeah, El Salvador was in a completely different position. They were on the US dollar standard because their local currency completely died over the last 20 years. So now, instead of being a nation state that has access to the money printer and can control issuance of the money, they became plebs just like all of us. They're at the bottom of the pyramid and they're on a US dollar standard. They're a government who has no way to print those money. They basically at the very bottom of the what's the Cantillon effect. So they had to come up with something better. They had to bring capital in a different way. So they decided to become the most regulatory environment friendly to Bitcoiners and tech entrepreneurs. So what they did, they made Bitcoin a legal tender. After that, they decided to lower taxes. They said there will be zero corporate taxes on any tech company that comes and builds in El Salvador. Tech companies bring the most amount of money. Like that's the biggest U.S. export is software, right?
Right.
This is how the capital comes in. So bringing tech entrepreneurs into the country will definitely help you with bringing capital in, and then you get jobs. You just start raising the quality of life. Sorry, I got a drink.
It's all good. I figured you needed to since you were coughing. And I really like this statement that you were making on one of your tweets, that we didn't want to just sit and witness the sovereign individual thesis play out. We wanted to accelerate it, and we're helping the free market evolve to make governments compete for your wealth and fruit for your labor while incentivizing them to provide you with better services at better prices. And I think the country, like I agree with what you're saying. I think that you will have countries offering second passports and ultimately citizenships, but I feel like it's going to be limited based off the nations that don't want to play the globalization game, that don't want to play the World Economic Forum game, like El Salvador, like what they because like they stood up against the IMF. The IMF threatened to stop giving them loans, and if I'm not mistaken, I think El Salvador is actually able to pay off their loan to the IMF, if I'm not mistaken. So I've
Yeah.
heard really good things. Like apparently the president there, is it Bukele? I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Yep. Bukele.
Okay, so he locked up, put in jail all the cartel gang members, all the problematic individuals, cleaned up the nation, and which was very, very well known for kind of being violent. With the cartel crime rate, murder rate, which all that is decreased because of the action. So I like that. It kind of feels, I guess, in some ways that you're being limited, but you're being limited by just the ones, to me, that again don't want to be a part of that globalization club. Do
Truly.
you
And
use do you use anything from the UN, like the right of self-determination, for any of the stuff that you do?
not really. I really try to focus on my thing because there will be other services that provide you with other parts of this sovereign individual thesis. I just really try to gain as much expertise on the citizenship by investment, basically capitalistic immigration or investment migration, better say. And that's just my focus. I know that what Bitcoiners want. I know that what I know the most. And also, you mentioned how it's going to be different countries. Maybe not your first choice in some ways, but this the world of investment migration is kind of cyclical, but also very much like basically very easily changeable all the time. Like Turkey, for example. Turkey as there's probably a government shit show going on. Um there's, how do they say it, the person in power is tyrant,
Dictator?
dictator, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
they say. But a lot of Americans want Turkey passport. And you'll say, why? Like the passport itself, not very powerful. They don't have visa free access to Europe. The shit shows going on in the country. There's a hyperinflation happening. But if you're trying to play the game of plan B passport exit strategy, you want to find a country that is on the other side of the spectrum from where you currently are. So
Right.
if you're coming from a five I country, which is America, Canada, UK, New Zealand, Australia, basically five I country, if you don't know this
I know
term,
I know what you're talking about.
those five countries just share all the information between each other, and they will report whatever. They will extradite you with absolutely zero problem. You want to get out of this. European passport would be pretty close. EU is basically in bed with American government, let's say. So you don't want to do that. But you do want to find something like Turkey, who is willing to withstand against five I countries or something like this. Or a lot of people started looking in Dubai because those are on the other spectrum, on the other side of the religious spectrum. which basically takes the political stand, and they just won't extradite you to a non-Muslim country. So you have to be very strategic about it and understand, do I really want to change Canada for United States, or is it the same flag? Um, so yeah, and this situation is changing a lot. We see countries who I would never thought would be leading the way are totally jumping it. Like Armenia is one of the countries that is trying to bring up their own citizenship by investment program, which I'm very excited about. On the other side, we see Latin America growing so quickly in terms of providing interest to nomads and tech entrepreneurs. Everybody wants to move to Mexico, Costa Rica, Brazil, Colombia. It's cheaper, it's nice, it's not as woke. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been thinking about Mexico, and I've also been thinking about Mexico as being, and I'm not sure if you'll understand this term, a honeypot. You know what a honeypot is?
yeah.
Um, because there's a lot of wealthy people, a lot of crypto people moving down to Mexico, and it would be real easy for cartel members to kidnap people
Yeah, you
and be able to extort them, extract their keys and their private information.
you gotta play it smart in Latin America for sure. Like, if your biggest threat here in the US, probably three-letter agency and state actor, your biggest threat in Latin America is a $5 wrench attack, right? So when I lived in Mexico, I tried to play the gray man game when you're trying to blend in and look like a local and not stand out in any way, which is ridiculously hard when you're a Russian blonde in Mexico.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
But I try to do my best. But that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that your car is not necessarily visible right away, like noticeable. You want to look not very noticeable, but it's not easy for sure.
No, I totally get it, and what you're saying makes sense. The last time I saw you was at Bitcoin 23, and you guys had a booth there and a really awesome brochure that full of great information. I'll try to see if I can get a picture of it, or get you to send me a copy of an image of it to share on social media. But I would like to, like, when you're talking to somebody about this that wants to learn about and doesn't and hasn't really done a lot of like background research on this, what would you say are the con or the pros of getting second passports? As far as from your particular opinion, being somebody that has obtained a second passport yourself, or at least one.
Yeah. So the first question I ask, what are your needs and goals? What are you trying to achieve while you're looking into that? Some people will say, I truly just want a Plan B passport. I want to make sure that my family has a place to go in case shit hits the fan. Especially American clients, we hear that from them the most. Now, if we're talking about Canadian, UK clients, some European, they want to get out. They want to actually relocate. So they're trying to find the best strategy to minimize taxes, as well as they're trying to find the best place to live with their family, put the kids to school, etc., etc. So depending on your needs and goals, we'll start customizing the process. Now we will also ask you questions like, what's your current job looking like? What is your source of funds? Because let's say you just bought Bitcoin on local Bitcoin, you have absolutely no proof when you bought it, how much you currently have. It's not on an exchange. So because those governments, they will ask how you're going to pay for real estate or how you're going to pay for the donation. So depending on your source of funds, we will lower down the countries that will be able to qualify you. Now, on top of that, we'll say, okay, is it just you? Is it you and your spouse and your kids? Because the price will vary depending on how many family members are going to apply with you. And then based on all that, we'll just try to find this perfect spot which jurisdiction like basically answers all your requirements, as well as provides you with the best price. For example, St. Lucia is one of the most popular jurisdictions for single applicants, and a lot of crypto people, just single dudes looking for an escape. So St. Lucia is definitely very popular. It's 135,000, all things considered, all in. And all you have to do is submit some paperwork, and 6 to 8 months later, you got the passport in the mail. You don't have to visit the island. You don't have to move to the island, and you already got yourself a second passport. And very important thing to mention is that the majority of the funds you pay at the very end when you already got a letter of approval. The reason it's so important for you all is because everybody's trying to time the market. So let's say you apply today. Day one, you only pay our fee, which is $12,500. Day 30 is when you pay government fees, which is around $9,600. And then 6 months later, you get your letter of approval, and then you submit the rest of the money. And we've had cases when a person would start the application at the top of the bull market, and then by the time he got approved, Bitcoin is absolutely dumping at 15K, and he's like, I'm not willing to do that right now. And we were able to delay the actual donation by 9 months, so the Bitcoin can go back up, and he feels comfortable putting down the 100 grand. So this timing the market thing is very important. That's why we always say don't wait for the top of the bull market to start it. Start ahead of time, and if we have to, we will delay the actual donation.
Well said. I mean, and that's definitely for the crypto people. I mean, there's some of the people that do watch my channel that probably don't own crypto and want to look at other options. But and I know you guys offer those. So some of the things that you listed or that was listed on the brochure was being the ultimate hedge, tax reduction, asset protection, privacy, visa-free travel, offshore banking, a bug-out home, and an insurance policy, and ways to hedge against the state. I like the idea of governments competing for you to be there. I think that's a beautiful idea. What are some of the cons
Well, it
for
costs
this?
you 150 grand. That's quite a con.
Well, is that the cheapest package that you have, like overall cost with what covers from a government perspective and from the service perspective of Plan B? What's the
if you're
cheapest
looking for
low end, full end cost?
if you're looking for a straight path to citizenship, that's the lowest cost. Obviously, there are other immigration processes that you can take that are way cheaper. For example, you can just have a baby in Brazil, and a year later, you got yourself a passport called anchor baby or birth tourism process.
Right.
Or you can take a long way where you basically apply for residency first. It could be through job or financial solvency. Mexico does it. If you can prove that you have, let's say, 55 grand in your bank account or brokerage account, they will give you a 1 year residency. Next year, they will probably give you 2 year residency. After that, they will probably give you 4 year residency. And then once you hold your residency for 5 years, you can actually apply for citizenship. So see, this is, and this process is going to cost you almost near to nothing. You just have to prove that you have the money. But then you have to invest in, living in the country for 5 years. And then you also have to learn the language and history of the country because there will be a naturalization exam. So there are very cheap but full of effort programs, or they are very expensive, effortless, and quick programs. So if we're talking about the quick ones, 130 grand is your best bet. Or with Turkey, for example, the government fees are much cheaper, but you just have to own a $400,000 worth of real estate. So if you're willing to buy a nice 2-bedroom in Istanbul and you actually want to relocate there, that's your path to citizenship.
$400,000 investment? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is obviously denominated in US dollars?
US dollars, yeah.
Okay. I was just curious. I want to make sure I had that. What about like being like tax obligations? Would you like if I had a second citizenship with one of the nations that you guys have listed, am I paying double taxes to two different nations?
Well, the jurisdiction we work with, most of them have zero taxation, so you
Okay.
wouldn't even have to file. But one thing is very important and kind of shitty. US citizens are in a very unique situation. Only 2 countries in the whole world have this thing called citizenship-based taxation, meaning that no matter where you live, no matter how many passports you have, where your income coming from, you always have to file with Uncle Sam no matter what. Now then, you still can save on your taxes. For example, if you file as a non-resident of the US, meaning that you're a citizen, but you lived elsewhere, let's say in Dubai for most of the year, then you file in the US as a non-resident. I forgot the name of the form. I-140, something like this. I don't remember.
Okay.
And you basically able to not pay taxes on the first $110,000 of your income. But that's like, it's not necessarily what crypto people want. They mostly
Right.
want no capital gains tax. And with the US, it's like almost impossible, especially as a citizen. That's why a lot of people renounce their US citizenship, because they just want to have nothing to do with IRS ever again.
I was going to ask you about that. Also, I mean, I guess, and I think they're changing it up, but Puerto Rico was something that people in the United States, especially a lot of financial people, not just crypto, but financial in general, because of, I don't think it was zero capital gains, but it was like 3 or
Up
4%.
to 4%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
acts
now I think they've made it more difficult now for U.S. citizens to do that versus 5 years ago, where I think you could have just easily have done it. Now I think you have to. It's almost a little bit what you're saying, like making investments and things like that, and having property.
Yeah,
If I
they will
understand it,
definitely shut down this program sooner rather than later. Just like I mentioned, there are certain countries that have a lot of power in the world of geopolitics, and they're pressuring other countries to do certain things. For example, all the EU countries like Portugal and Cyprus, they had golden visa program where you purchase real estate and you obtain permanent residency in the country. Well, EU made them shut it down because they don't like selling residency or citizenship in the EU. And I believe they shut themselves in the knee. And those smaller countries, not as powerful as, let's say, Germany, kind of need those programs to bring in capital. So right now, they're just obeying what the bigger brother in the EU says, but it will end at some point. Same is going to happen with Puerto Rico. Right now, you can, as you know, Puerto Rico is not a state, but it is a territory of the United States. So you can move there without any immigration issues. However, you have to like establish your residency there, get yourself a long-term rental, sometimes start a company, and then you have a very strict limit of how much time you can spend on the mainland. Funny enough, in 2018, I actually spent almost 4 months in Puerto Rico trying to make it work for myself and make my life there. But it wasn't that pleasurable, let me tell you that.
I've heard a lot of I've heard a lot of mixed opinions, but yeah, I've heard it's unless you're living in certain areas and you got a lot of money, you're not going to enjoy it. And I had a couple different friends that have YouTube channels that moved back because of major internet issues.
Exactly. I was just gonna say it took 2 weeks to sync a node because either electricity would go down or internet would go down. Ridiculous.
Right. No, that's what I've heard.
Obviously, you can make it work. Like I've seen people building mansions there, and they live a comfortable life. You can do that for sure. In order to save on your capital gains taxes, it makes total sense for many, but not for everyone. So basically, as a U.S. citizen, if your goal is to reduce taxes, you have few options. Option one: become a non-resident of the United States, file as a non-resident, and save on the first $110,000 of your income. Option two: move to Puerto Rico, and now you have up to 4% capital gains tax, which is nothing compared to the mainland. And option three is to renounce your U.S. citizenship. It's a huge step, definitely not for everyone. You won't be able to live in the United States. You basically saying goodbye to your homeland.
Yeah.
The process is quite the process. They will audit the last 5 years of your taxes, and then you will have to actually go into embassy and go through a renunciation process outside of the United States. But quite a few of my clients did that, and they just want to have nothing to do with the United States, with its politics and its taxes, and they build a beautiful life in Latin America or anywhere else. There's no hard feelings about it for them, but a lot of my clients just not willing to take this step. I understand.
I got a few questions about the renouncing U.S. citizenship specifically. Does your company help people with the process of renouncing their U.S. citizenship?
We let you know how it's going to look. We do not facilitate the process.
Okay.
I do have a friend of mine, lawyer in Europe Union, who's American, who renounced his American citizenship and moved elsewhere, and he helps Americans to do that. So we're just going to share the contact.
And for people like if you've ever heard the term like expat or expatriation, that's what we're talking about. And that's where I was asking you about because like you're supposed to, by international law, have the right to change jurisdictions based on the right of self-determination, and that's what I was referring to earlier. When one does expatriate or renounces their U.S. citizenship, what is you said they did a 5-year tax audit, but what is the tax obligation for in
Yeah.
the future? Because I've heard something like you still have to pay taxes for like up to 10 years or something to that effect.
So what they're gonna do is they're gonna ask for exit tax on anything above $2 million. So let's say you renounce your U.S. citizenship and you have a net worth of $6 million. They're gonna try and tax 40% of the $4 million that you have. And we talk about all the assets. They will include real estate. They will include your crypto. They will include whatever stock you have, etc. Now, I believe again the process of renunciation should be very well thought through and very well timed, because the way it works, let's say you renounce at the very bottom of the bear market. Let's say you renounce Bitcoin is $13,000. You don't actually pay the exit tax in the moment. You pay it April 15 next year. So you're like, okay, I'm at the bottom of bear market. I'm gonna renounce now. We're gonna count my net worth based on the current price of Bitcoin and other assets. And then I will pay 8 months later when my assets actually doubled or tripled. So instead of paying 40%, I'm going to feel much better about it because I don't have to spend that much of a percentage. So it is a big step. It requires a lot of thinking and strategical planning. And like that's not the decision I make for other people. I give them the information and the call is theirs.
Okay. But how long is the duration that you're required to pay taxes after you renounce your citizenship?
You actually don't. There's no certain, well, depends on your income streams and depends on your capital. So if you, again, you pay exit tax, you're done. If you have some legal entities, they still bring you money and they're in the US, that will be something that you need to, talk about with your accountant.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
And
All right.
full disclaimer, I'm not your lawyer. I'm not
I
an
know,
accountant. I'm not
and I'm
tax
probably
person.
asking you. I'm trying to ask questions that I think people that are watching this would have,
Yeah,
for the most
I
part.
appreciate it for sure.
And I know that there's only so much that you can and can't say, and I'm sure you could speak a lot more freely in a consultation. Which I did notice on the website that people can schedule a consultation with you guys for free.
Yep.
So just click the consultation button. But again, there will be an affiliate link for Rice TVX if you guys are interested in taking advantage and signing up for Plan B Passport at planbpassport.com. And I'll have that link in the video description and the pinned comment as a way that you can support the channel, which would be greatly appreciated. So the other thing I wanted to ask you in regards to the U.S. citizenship stuff is I was looking through your YouTube channel last night, and we're recording this on the 22nd of June. I want to have this out midweek next week. You were talking about when people are renouncing their U.S. citizenship that they're giving up an extremely powerful passport. Can you explain what you mean by the United States passport being an extremely powerful passport, and what are people giving up?
Yeah, when we look into what goes into understanding how powerful is your passport, the first thing is how many countries do you have visa free? As an American, you probably never had to get a visa to go anywhere. My husband was mind blown when he had to get a visa to Russia and it took him 2 weeks and he actually had to ship his passport somewhere into the embassy and they reviewed his application. He needed to provide his bank statements, flights information, the address where he's going to be staying. He was completely mind blown. And then once he got into Russia, he had to go to the local office and stamp that like he actually stays at this address. So
it's like being on probation almost.
Yeah, it was crazy for him. But me as a Russian, I went my whole life I was getting visas to go everywhere. I used to be a professional athlete and I was on Russian national team for my whole life, my whole
what did you
childhood.
do?
Yeah, sailing.
Sailing,
So
okay.
yeah, I was a captain of Russian full female national team. Every time I would have to go to Europe for Europe Cup, to World Cup, I would have to apply for a visa. And that's another thing. I would always get denied. That was ridiculous. The whole team gets approved. Me, the captain of the team, gets denied. I got denied by Spanish visa, got denied by Swiss visa once. And like this process just made me realize how shitty my passport is. It's almost amazing. So, as a Russian, I have access to like most of Latin America, most of Asia, but I have absolutely no access to America, Canada, or Europe Union. You, as an American, have access to most of Latin America, all of Europe Union, some Asian countries, not East Europe at all. So, depending on your current passport, you, like that's how it's called, visa-free access or visa on arrival. That's one thing that makes your passport powerful. Another one is if you're in trouble in another country, does your home country have an embassy or consulate in this country to come rescue you? America has it almost everywhere. And not that you want to rely on your home country to come and rescue you.
But it's a good insurance policy.
Yeah, it's good. Why not? So those are the 2 points that I would definitely look into.
Okay. Is there a limitation on how many second passports that people can have?
In most cases, no. So, for example, you know that America is a land of immigrants, so everybody's got a second passport. If we're talking about, let's say, Netherlands, they actually don't like second citizenship. They will limit you in your ability to obtain a second passport. There are some exceptions in which they will allow you to do that, but Netherlands basically doesn't allow dual citizenship. Same with India, same with China. So those people from those countries have to be very careful when they obtain second citizenship. They need to make sure that they fall under the exception. Sometimes they have to file for this exemption. So,
But if I, in theory, though, if I could afford it, could I essentially get a second passport for all the different countries that you offer?
we have a client who says he feels like he's collecting Pokemons.
Like Pokemon cards. So
Yeah.
he's collecting second passports.
Yeah.
I love it. That's
So,
beautiful.
yep. I
That's
know
really
people
cool.
who have 6, 7 passports, and they're very happy with that.
Is there, and this wasn't something I was planning on asking you, and this is kind of the last real question, is of the nations that you offer, is there one that you have like a particular preference over?
So, as I
And
mentioned,
if
the
so,
industry is
what?
ever changing.
Right.
So, for example, St. Kitts that you currently have on screen, they recently offered a $50,000 discount for the first 6 months of this year that ends in 8 days.
8
And a
days
lot of
from
our
now.
clients, yeah, a lot of our clients jumped on it as quickly as they could because it's $25,000 discount on donation plus $25,000 discount on expedited processing. And they were like, hell yeah, I'm in.
That's where
While,
Roger Veer lives out there.
yep,
Yeah.
I actually met him at St. Kitts a few years ago. It was 2019, I
Because
want to
he
say.
ultimately expatriated, and I did want to have a conversation with him about that, but that's not something that he's willing to do on a public level.
He actually told me a joke about it. So when he was renouncing his U.S. citizenship, which I think is public information.
Yeah, no, it's very public. He's very much made, because I think he's a, if I'm not mistaken, a dual citizen, because I think he has citizenship in Japan and St. Kitts, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So when he was renouncing U.S. citizenship, the officer at the embassy said, "So are you gonna pay fee with a banking card or Bitcoin?" And he was like, "What? Can I really do that?" I'm like, no, I'm shitting with you. So I thought that was really cool on the officer's side.
Well, at least he knew who Roger was at that point.
Oh, totally.
And Roger's stuff had nothing. It was more of a personal decision based off of a court decision and how he was treated. Because I think he ultimately was put in prison for the illegal sell or something to do with firecrackers,
Fireworks, yeah.
fireworks. Is Dominica? This is not Dominican Republic, is it?
No, it's Dominica. It's a
Okay.
Caribbean island next to St. Lucia and some others. So Caribbean islands are the ultimate tax havens, very well known in the citizenship by investment programs. All 5 islands have very straight paths to citizenship, and they just that's their market. They're truly dominating it. I hope that El Salvador will jump on this train and offer citizenship by investment program. That's something I've been talking a lot about because El Salvador, you'll be surprised, it has a very powerful passport. EU visa-free access, some East Europe visa-free access, all of Latin America. And instead of being a Caribbean island that is surrounded by water, they're actually inland. So you can actually get there by land, which is huge. Also,
Yeah.
being a Bitcoin country, being able to accept the donation in Bitcoin, as well as being able to accept, like, they always want to see proof of funds. And it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, you can sign a message and prove that you own that Bitcoin,
Yeah.
but I tried explaining it to Caribbean islands, like mind blowing for them, never gonna understand it, and that's okay.
So El Salvador, like what, like when people like Max Kaiser and these other individuals are going down there, staying for a length of time, are they just getting visas, or are they trying to apply for?
So Max and Stacy already got their residencies.
Well, they know the president, so I'm sure that helped.
Yeah, I'm sure that helped. You can apply for digital nomad visa in El Salvador. You just actually have to move down there and spend time. Basically, most of Latin American countries have this immigration process based on financial solvency, where you either have to prove your salary being above certain points, which for El Salvador it's like $1,400 a month or something. And if you can prove that salary, they will give you residency.
And I'm assuming you guys are going to be adding more nations as programs are available.
Yeah, for sure. We always try to add more programs, or sometimes we actually get rid of programs when we realize that either program got dropped by the government or we just don't support the value of this country. For example, there was Vanuatu, an island next to Australia, who has citizenship by investment program, but we realized their due diligence process is an absolute shit show. Like, anybody can get in as long as they pay money, and that always means that they will lose visa treaties. Which what happened was European Union. European Union said, if your Vanuatu passport has been issued after 2018, you're not visa free here.
Wow, wow. I met somebody also while I was at Bitcoin 23 that was talking about Portugal. She's Portuguese, and she's was explaining. It sounds really similar to what El Salvador does.
Yeah, so we used to have Portugal on our website as one of our programs. They had this golden visa where you obtain real estate in the country, and on this basis, you get a permanent residency. Pressure of EU got to them. They also had like no taxes on crypto, which was a huge deal for many of my clients. But what happened is all the pressure from EU, they stopped actually processing applications. I even have a client who purchased a very expensive property in Portugal for the sake of golden visa, and for a year and a half they just don't do anything. They don't send him any information on that at all. So he's kind of stuck in the process, and we're currently opening a court case to solve that.
So Portugal is part of the EU.
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, I know it's part of the European continent, but I didn't know it was actually part of the EU.
Yeah.
And something I wanted to add a comment to, because you were talking about the kind of people kind of bowing down to the rules of the EU and a lot of things becoming more difficult. I'm not, if I'm not mistaken. I know France is just recently apparently trying to apply to be a part of the BRICS nations.
Oh,
So I wonder if that has, if they are starting the process of exiting the EU.
I
So
said
it just kind of makes me think about what you said earlier about how people are succumbing to the powers that be, and now it looks like the powers that be, the power strips, like it's starting to break up a little bit.
for sure. It might sound a little apocalyptic, but I think EU has 3-4 years for its existence. Like, the countries who applied to be part of the EU no longer really care to be included. Like, we're talking about, let's say, Serbia, Montenegro. When they applied, they really wanted to be in because it was like a powerful connection to have.
Yeah.
And now people start exiting, and I don't think it adds any value to you or your country or any protection to you as a citizen to be part of the EU anymore. I honestly feel like it's more of a disadvantage for some people. So I think EU has 3-4 years.
Be interesting to just pay attention to. I mean, I think a lot of things are going to be shifting over the 3 to 5 year period globally, which would be interesting to watch. I do appreciate your time. I really learned a lot, and I hope everybody else did. And again, if people are interested in obtaining second passports, there's lots of different options. And if you want to use what Plan B Passport is doing, and I will mention one more time, I will have my affiliate link down below in the video description and the pinned comment. So make sure you use those. And by the time this thing comes out, let me count the days. You might have 2 or 3 days left to take advantage of that discount in St. Kitts. I just let people know. People that are watching on the private side, obviously you have access to that information, and I'll provide that affiliate link as soon as I get it. I'm going to have links down below for your Twitter account if people want to follow you directly, as well as the Plan B Passport Twitter account, the planbpassport.com website, the Plan B Passport, the Bittersweet Podcast YouTube channel. I like the Bittersweet Podcast. And I'll also include a link for that book that you mentioned, The Sovereign Individual. But aside from that, Katie, and aside from everything else that we've talked about, do you have any final thoughts, anything that you want to add before we wrap up today's interview?
No, I just want to tell everybody, try to play the game of jurisdictional arbitrage so we all make our governments to, compete for us. And that will definitely bring their services up, the price down, and will help us take some control back over their decision making.
Beautiful, beautiful. And again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate explaining a lot of this. I've known you for several years. I've known you had this company for a couple years, and really just now expressing interest because of what is the uncertainty of our future here, specifically for me in the United States, and not knowing what the direction of the government is going to take with this next presidential election. So right now, I think is the most important time for us to be able to look into options before those options aren't available, because I would like to think that the governments don't want their slaves leaving their fences, their plantations, to go to another plantation. So I'm pretty sure they're going to make this more and more and more difficult. So I encourage people to, if this is something that you've been considering, definitely take advantage. There's residency options, there's citizenship options, and the process isn't very long. And Plan B Passport is going to save you time. You could do all this on your own in a lot of elements, but the biggest factor that you have to take in consideration with this is time. And time is my most valuable asset. And this is the reason why I brought Katie the Russian on the show, so she can help save you some time.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again. Just bear with me real quick. I'm just going to do the wrap up. So I'm going to have links down below for everything we talked about. Make sure you're subscribed here at Rice TVX and my other channel, Rice Against the Grain. And I will leave you with this. I encourage you, as always, to be a blessing to others. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the glitch that you want to see in the matrix, and be the change that you want to see in this world. And until next time, practice change. Make sure that if you are interested in using Plan B Passport to obtain a second passport for one of the different nations that Plan B offers, to use my affiliate link down below in the video description and the pinned comment. And it's another way that you can support Rice TVX.